What's up, brand builders? Stephen Hurahan here on the Brandmaster podcast. Now, GALE and MilkPEP took on the challenge of reversing a 15-year decline in milk sales by reframing milk's role in performance and sports nutrition. Instead of competing with traditional dairy alternatives, they set their sights on sports drinks, positioning milk as a superior choice for athletes, runners, and even gamers. And in our chat today, we cover why traditional milk marketing was failing and what had to change, how MilkPEP turned women-first marathons into a movement, and the brand strategy lessons from this campaign that any business can apply. So if you want to learn how to reposition an everyday product into a high-performance brand while making a real cultural impact, don't miss this episode of the Brandmaster Podcast. Welcome to the Brandmaster Podcast, a show specialized in helping branding professionals and entrepreneurs build brands using strategy, psychology, and creative thinking. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brandmaster Podcast. And I'm absolutely delighted to have on the show with me today Yin Woon Rani from MilkPEP, the CEO of MilkPEP. I hope we're going to also be joined by Brad Sims, CEO of GALE. And if that's the case, then we're going to have a unique chat because we've got both client side with the brand of MilkPEP, and we have agency side as well with GALE. First of all, Yin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Great. Thank you for having me. Always happy to share our story.
Okay, so look, why don't you give the audience a little bit of an idea about what MilkPEP is, because it's quite actually a unique brand. I'm not gonna jump in and explain that. I'll let you give us a little overview as to what MilkPEP is.
Sure. It's actually MilkPEP, PEP, which stands for Processor Education Program. And as you say, it is unique. It's a government-administered program where the milk companies of America pool dollars together to create basically an advertising fund. And so we're lucky enough to represent those milk companies to encourage Americans to drink fluid milk. It's probably best known, at least in this market, for the Got Milk ads that ran for many years, with the Milk Mustache celebrity ads, a campaign that ran for about 20 years, and the program has been in existence for about 30.
Nice. And in terms of the challenge that you guys had, because obviously when we think of a brand, we tend to think of a brand has customers who have a challenge, and the brand fixes that problem or provides some kind of solution to that problem. So that's why MilkPEP is such a unique brand from that perspective. It does have that difference, that it is representing the entire industry and trying to kind of raise awareness and increase production from that side. In terms of the main challenge that MilkPEP had when you approach GALE, talk to us a little bit about where you guys were and the challenge that you were facing at that time.
Yeah, I mean, myself and many of my staff grew up in more classical brand building. So we also we always try to be conscious of what's the same when you're marketing a brand and what's this different when you're marketing a category. I mean, in some ways, milk is its own brand relative to other food and beverage categories like water or Pepsi or Starbucks. But there are some things that are different for it being a brand. And so I've been in the job about 5 years. And milk, frankly, has been in a state of modest decline for probably 20 or 30 years, with a couple of good years here and a couple of bad years. But it was a sort of a long-term secular decline. And it was not one thing, frankly, and people always ask me that question, but it was multiple variables, a lot of competitive proliferation, water, all kinds of new beverages, CSD, et cetera, a rise on on-the-go occasions. Milk is an 80% at-home occasion, and as Americans started to eat on the go more, particularly breakfast, that obviously impacted us. Things as basic as birth rate. The American birth rate is down. Milk is disproportionately consumed by children. So it's been many, many aspects. But when we came to GALE, the strategy that we've been pursuing was we were and we still are going after sort of the cultural narrative, especially when I walked in 5 years ago. Milk was, I think, very much on its heels in terms of cultural relevance, and being, I think, in some ways undefined by plant-based competitors like almond, soy, and oat. And there was a feeling that milk was a drink of yesteryear,
Mm,
plant was hot, even though it's a very small category. So we've been working very hard on what we call reconsideration,
hmm
because milk does not have an awareness. And frankly, even today, we're in 90% of households. I think we had a perception problem and a relevance problem of like, does milk fit into diets today? And so we've been working hard on this kind of cultural relevance piece,
mm,
reinforcing benefits, but also sort of asserting our role in modern life.
mm. Would you say the reason for the decline over, the last 15 years or so would be primarily from competition from other drinks, or was there something kind of else underneath that as to why people stopped drinking milk the way they used to?
I mean, it really is a death by a thousand cuts. I mean,
Mm,
competition was definitely part of it. The lack of portability was part of it. The category was not as quick to innovate as some others. There's a lot of um, sort of sectorial ecosystem issues because there's a highly regulated industry that prevented innovation in some ways. So it really was not one variable, I would say. And frankly, people always talk about plant-based, but our biggest source of competitive switching is actually to bottled water,
mm,
the rise of bottled water, and tap water, obviously, as a beverage alternative. Replaced a lot of occasions. I mean, 40 or 50 years ago, adults would have milk at lunch and dinner, and that's just not a habit you see anymore. So
mm.
it is truly multiple reasons. I think probably sustainability emerged in the last 10 years as a conversation. Not clear that it really affected preference in the end, but definitely dairy is in that sustainability conversation, often in a negative way.
Mm. And in terms of the approach, because obviously the challenge there for Gale was clear. You worked closely with Brad and the team over at Gale in terms of coming up with the best approach to the problem. So, what led to the creative solution that you guys came up with, which was ultimately repositioning milk as a performance drink rather than how we traditionally saw it? What did you guys go through, and what did you see that led you to that conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, as always in these stories, I think there's a strategic component to it, and then there was a probably more tactical and opportunistic reason for it. Strategically, I think it did two things. It gave us a use case, basically, in which milk's many benefits was highly relevant. I mean, one of the virtues of milk with its 13 essential nutrients is that it has a wealth of functional benefits, unlike any food or beverage I've ever worked on. And so the athletic performance kind of use case was a great place to showcase the benefits on which milk is the strongest. Presence of protein, a great balance of sugar and protein for recovery, post exercise, bone health, heart health, many of those things. So it was a very logical place for milk benefits to shine. But it was also slightly unexpected. I mean, milk has supported athletes for a very long time, but also is seen as a family product. And so we wanted something that a little bit of like, I didn't always think of milk that way. So I think that was some of the strategic reasons. And it let us, in some ways, borrow from the sports drinks and energy drinks playbook and do things that were just a little more unexpected, a little more attention getting, leveraging athletes particularly. So that was the strategic consideration. The tactical and opportunistic consideration when we RFP'd this pitch, I guess in the year 2020, we were in the last year of our Olympic partnership. So we needed a big platform that could house 2021, which would be an Olympic year because the Tokyo Olympics were moved. So the line that Gail pitched and the idea of you're going to need milk for that, which we still use today, was also meant to be used for the Olympic effort. But we love the idea and the platform so much, and it's proved to have many, many legs beyond Olympics. But our really short-term and immediate consideration for 21 was a big Olympic partnership.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds a little bit like Nike's campaign, "Just Do It." The campaign tag, was so well received that it just applied to the brand, and it's something that you can continue to use going forward. So I really like that. In terms of how you guys landed on marathons, because when you talk about performance drinks, there's many different roads that you can go down. What was it about marathons and specifically kind of women driven marathons that kind of made you go down that road? And are we looking at the gateway to different events, or is marathons really where you guys want to focus longer term?
I mean, I think we think of marathons as sort of the pinnacle of running.
Hmm.
Um, we do believe that is a proxy for all forms of, exercise, running. I think there's two parts of the story. One is we made a commitment um, to support women and women in sports, specifically on International Women's Day, I guess now 2 years ago, that we only feature women in front of and behind the camera. We were trying to use our dollar as our investment to overcome some of the, frankly, inequities in sports. At that point, the statistic was professional female athletes only receive 5% of sponsorship dollars and 7% of broadcast time, which was a shocking statistic for the
Mm.
2020s. So our commitment to women actually extends beyond this marathon. Even in our regular product-based claims-based advertising, we are featuring female characters, and we're trying to hire, and we are hiring female crew, female directors, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the female part of it, which extends beyond athletics. The marathon thing, we came in, and you'll hear the story a lot about the GALE MilkPEP partnership. One of the things I think that makes us strong is that we have a sense of agility. We're willing to run experiments and then scale them. So the impetus of the marathon running was um, really basically hacking the New York City Marathon. We
Mm.
wanted to do some an event-based thing that would be attention-getting. And so now I guess it would have been 22. Gil approached me probably 90 days before the marathon and said, we have this idea where we want to sponsor the women who are running the race, not the marathon itself.
Hmm.
And so just 90 days, they amazingly, incredibly put together a program where we showed up at the expo, even though I won't name it, the competitor, Sports Drink was the official sponsor. And we had women sign up to Team Milk. We gave them a great experience. We put them on billboards, and the goal was really about celebrating the everyday athlete. And now we're celebrating the everyday mom as well.
Hmm.
And so marathons sound sort of inaccessible, but really our premise is that it's about peak performance. And running is a very common sport with many people on the team who are committed runners. So I think it was a combination of that female focus that is extensive, and then that opportunistic hack of New York City Marathon, which then translated into a year full of marathon appearances, New York, Chicago, Boston. I think it's something like 20 smaller races, and hence was birthed the ambition to host our own, because I think we're having such a great reception and such a great appearance at the other people's races. We like to dream big over here, and so the team felt like we could put those resources to bear on hosting our very own race. And again, back to inequity, surprisingly, as at this point, there was no full-length female-only marathon left in this country, at least. They
Hmm.
had been, but they've been all sunsetted for different reasons. So I think we something we could own and something we could make special.
Nice, nice. Brad, welcome to the chat. We've just been catching
Right.
up on the work that you
Yeah, for
guys
sure.
have been doing on MilkPEP. And in fact, I kind of got ahead of myself with the questions, and I think this would probably be a good time to step back a little, because our audience hasn't actually heard the strategic kind of end solution that we came up with as a whole. I kind of just alluded to it within my question. So kind of going back to the challenge that MilkPEP came to you with, and the process that you went through to kind of understand the dynamics of the market and the challenge and the situation and the solution. Can you talk to us about the how that creative solution came about, and from a 10,000-foot view, what that solution looked like?
Yeah, I mean, as Ian was talking about, I think obviously the charter for MilkPEP is to drive consumption of Class A milk in the United States, which is basically, the stuff that you buy in the gallon in the refrigerator. And I think, when we looked at the landscape, one of the things I think we realized is it's really our job to frankly market to all potential milk consumers. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
really the mission of MilkPEP. But ultimately, I think the thing that we realized is that although we have activations that are broader, we realized that there was a smaller and not small, still tens of millions of people that were highly influential in our target group. And these were folks that were active on social media. They are kind of the folks in your neighborhood that you go to get advice. They're the folks that are always talking. They're frankly the trendsetters. And I think to Yin's point just a second ago, we know that those folks, even if they aren't frankly out running a marathon, which 7,000 of them showed up to do and 20,000 on Strava, they are about everyday performance. And so figuring out how to access that audience and motivate them and connect them to milk and connect them to what we think are modern claims on milk, not the old calcium, good for your teeth, good for your bones. Those are still factual, but really figuring out how to get to that modern group of folks and really activate them as advocates for the product, I think was at the genesis. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we do at Milk. I mean, running is one of the huge pillars, but e-gaming is another one. Modern claims is another one. We use humor, we use comedy, all of that we do. Cultural tentpole activities. But when it gets to running, that's a very impactful audience and they're very influential. And so the strategy was, yeah, we need to touch everyone, but we need to also double down on this, this highly influential audience and really have them start to or continue to make milk part of their story. And if we could do that, then we could actually turn them into advocates for the brand. A lot of them were stronger advocates, and we could change the consumption trajectory. And so at the core, that was the strategy that we started out with.
Yeah, and I absolutely love it. And I would say the difference with what we're looking at here compared to a standard brand is that we all have experience with milk, all of us. We're not trying to sell liquid death water, and we're trying to get a group of people to look at water in a different way. We've all got that experience, and what it seems, standing back from where I am at the moment, is that this is a playbook that you guys have now written that you can apply to every single segment, and just tweak what you've done. And is that what we can kind of expect to see, or is the focus now going to be on the running segment and using that as the platform for everything else?
Well, I think Yin has a point of view on it, but we talk all the time about this idea of modern marketing. And I think you hit it on the head. We have the luxury, but frankly, also the challenge of being a category. It's just not pure luxury; it's also a challenge. And so, but I think there is a modern formula for marketing, and I think it is one that we are continually refining together between MilkPEP and GALE, and are extending it to other interesting ways in which we're getting after other core audiences. But I think that the story here is really, really interesting. I mean, there's so much conversation in the marketing space right now about how we overinvested in performance. Does brand still matter? What is a platform? There's so much quarterly pressure with a lot of our clients to make numbers every quarter, and they're basically, buying the lower funnel. And I think the thing that Yin has had the courage to do in MilkPEP is step back and be like, maybe there is a different way. Maybe 2.5 years ago, folks would have said, I don't know if it's going to be successful. But I think as we stand here a week out from the marathon and looking at the consumption results for the year, I think they were onto something, and we've really enjoyed partnering with them on that journey.
And what is it that's unique about your process? Because Yin could have gone to any kind of agency to help with this problem, and chances are they would have arrived at a different destination. I'm sure that there was a lot of input from both sides. Sure. But what is unique about your process that brought you to such a unique solution?
Yeah. So I'm going to use some terms probably that Yin has never heard, but I think we are sneaky with brand.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is when we first engage with a client, or when you first think about GALE or you talk about GALE, we have a very deep kind of pedigree and data and audiences and insights to that exact kind of process that I talked about modern performance and audiences. And I think that's kind of at the foundation of what we've always been about. But the reality is, I think our brand chops and our ability to take those insights, those audiences, those KPIs, those data signals, and interpret them to tell powerful brand stories, I actually think is something that is our superpower. And so, I think, a lot of agencies can tell unbelievable brand stories. I think a lot of agencies can bring interesting data chops, but they can't connect those two, or they need to go to a sister agency or a partner agency. But the other thing I would say is, so much of the success of an agency is its client. Frankly, we've been in the agency space for a very long time. I've been in it for 20 years. You've all, and I think that that journey requires a tremendous amount of partnership, because you are testing, and we've been out for 3 years, right? This works, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work. And so for us, I think it's our process. I think it's our capabilities. But frankly, it also comes down to the relationships with the client and the fact that, we are one team. We are like literally one team. And I think that is something I think a lot of clients aspire to, a lot of clients talk about, but I think MilkPEP and Yin have realized. And so, I think that has also contributed a little bit to the benefits.
Yeah, 100%. I would 100% guarantee that without that sense of oneness and collaboration, everybody pulling in the same direction, which Brad, you probably know well, is a luxury when working with a client. Then the results are certainly not going to be the same. In terms of where the brand MilkPEP is going now, Yin, obviously we're not too long after all of the work has been done. What has been the window since these results? You're coming down now from this big event. When do you expect to see the kind of longer term results, and what are the early indications as to what you will be seeing going forward?
Well, I think as Brad alluded to, this event, though very marquee and a wonderful achievement, is one piece in this relatively complex ecosystem. So in terms of results, I mean, Milk is having its best year, I think, in 15 years. So we're going to experience, I think, our first year of flat to positive growth, very modest. But given that the long-term CAGR is about -2 year on year on a giant category, by the way, it's a $25 billion category. So I think we're already seeing the fruits of our work and labor over the last several years, and not just us, the entire industry and all the brands who've contributed. So going forward, I think we just had this board meeting. We talked a lot about consistency. And so I think what we've done smartly is to be committed to this performance strategy, committed to our female-centric audience, to these influential families that Brad was describing. And going forward, we're going to be consistent but evolve smartly. I think we have done a nice job of balancing that foundational piece and not sort of just changing with the wind every time there's a bump in the road or a soft piece of data, like sort of throwing out the baby in the bathwater. I think we are jointly very committed to that strategy. And I think both also very open to evolving and adjusting. So we'll, as I mentioned earlier, we do plan to repeat the marathon. But we're adding a whole other kind of content layer to it, which I don't know that we've announced right now. We talked about gaming. We threw the biggest prize pool of an all-female Fortnite tournament this year. We had 3 virtual qualifiers and a very successful in-person. So we're going to double down on gaming with the same playbook of being in the community, designing for the community. So there's lots to come, I think. And I think our theory is it seems to be working. We're not going to start all over again just because it's a new calendar year. Sometimes just that planning cycle, like, oh, we got to do something new. And I think we like to keep on doing what's working and then having smart evolutions. And, and I give GALE prop for always being very creatively fertile. And there's no shortage of ideas. I think a large part of Brad's job, frankly, is to try to weed through the things that get pitched to him every day and every week and be like, okay. But it's a wonderful problem to have as a client, to have an agency that's this committed. And I know always thinking about the business. And we're very lucky with the partnership.
The
Yeah,
thing,
and
the thing I would
yeah.
add, if I just could, Stephen, is, and I think Yin said it, but it is just, I think it just helps crystallize the size of the category of milk. The amount of volume we are talking is
Mm,
staggering.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like we have a lot of great clients, but like I think that is what really, frankly, makes the current MilkPEP team's success so remarkable.
mm,
15 years of decline, but we're talking about a category that is massive. And so to move that, you use that old analogy, moving the Titanic.
mm,
This is like moving 5 Titanics.
mm,
So to move 5 Titanics in 2.5 years, like I think that's one of the things we realized when we first got involved is how epically large the volume is we're talking about. So when you hear, losing 1% or 2 a year, most people, that is a massive amount of milk. And so, Yin and the team have done an unbelievable job of shifting that pattern because the scale is really mind boggling we're talking about here.
mm, mm. And when you look at the strategy from the outside, I'm certainly a subscriber to the idea that the best strategies, when you see them, they seem so obvious. However, the simplicity that looks so obvious is so hard to achieve and so deceptively difficult. But what you guys have created now is a playbook that is aligning with the obvious trends and the obvious metrics in the market, where we're all looking more towards health and performance. And now this is a playbook that you guys can just, slightly angled to a different sector and roll out the of course there will be nuances, but roll out the same playbook. And yeah, I think the work that you guys have done together has been absolutely remarkable. Yin, in terms of, obviously, Brad has spoken about you as clients and being able to have a team that they work so well with. What have you seen? Because obviously you've spent a large amount of time on the agency side as well as the client side. What are you seeing with the way GALE approach problems and their whole experience that's different from your experience with traditional agencies?
Whoa, how long do you got, Stephen? So that's a big question. But yes, I'm a longtime agency person, and I think the good news, bad news is that either that makes me a really good client or a really bad client. Because I always say to the agency, I was like, well, don't bullshit a bullshitter. So, but I think I would say to all clients, when you start an agency search, it sounds super obvious, but just be super clear on what you want,
Mm,
super clear on what you value, because there's going to be some set of trade-offs. And I was lucky with my procurement partner that he put us through a very disciplined process. So I would agree with the things that Brad signaled earlier in terms of the combination of deep data heritage with amazing brand and creative chops. The two other things that I have found really useful in our partnership, and that was important to me going into the search, and which GALE has delivered on, and they're so obvious to Brad, he probably wouldn't even comment on them. I mean, for me, I don't think it's just about data. I think they are really great business partners. And we all say that, right? I've been a client business partner. I've held that title. I've partnered with account people and account leaders. And sometimes they're great business partners. And sometimes they're just there to make advertising. And I think I've shared this story before in a past client role when some crisis comes across my desk. I remember literally sitting in my office thinking, damn, I have to call 5 people. Which of these 5 people do I call? Which of them is going to give me an objective answer
mhm,
and not selling the thing they have to sell? So having someone who is very business oriented and has a consulting background almost rather than a agency background has been a huge boom, because milk has a very fundamental business problem before you
mhm,
get into marketing and advertising. So having someone like Brad and his agency that approach the problem from a business consultancy standpoint, I think is super valuable. Part one.
mhm.
Part
Yeah,
two, my
that's
other obsession is integrated marketing, integration across channels. I mean,
mm,
my Twitter handle is @integrated with a Y. I mean, that is how obsessed I am with it, because we as this industry have made it so hard to integrate across channels. And just as
mhm,
our consumers float in and out of this complex ecosystem of linear and social and platforms and real life, frankly, most holding company agencies are not set up well to navigate that. And when I first met Brad, I think he didn't have all the practice groups that he has today, but we had this shared vision of, if you orient around the audience and you show up where the audience wants you to show up, and you can move fluidly between those channels and still have channel expertise. I know it's so obvious to Gale's business model that Brad wouldn't even comment about it, but I will say I think it's pretty rare in the marketplace. And I feel very confident when we have a new project, a new brief, that the channel mix that is recommended and then delivered on is not biased, because that's the thing he has to sell. That is the thing that the audience wants us to be at. And he's added a lot of capabilities since we've met, and now really has a great 360 delivery vehicle that we can float in and out of based on the project. And I think that's quite hard in most holding company models, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's a great advertisement for Gale there, and I don't know if you guys have seen the Jaguar rebrand. Maybe they could have done with a little bit of insight from you, Brad. I want to ask you guys to comment, but it's been very, very interesting to see how how even the biggest can stray from the core idea of knowing who your customer is, the associations they expect from you, and how they can get it so wrong. But yeah, it's it sounds to me like the processes that you guys have there at Gale, to land on such a result like this is absolutely remarkable. In terms of if you were to give a single lesson, Brad, that could be, because obviously every brand is different, every market is different, every segment is different, every audience is different. What's a single lesson that brand leaders can take from what you guys have done here into their own markets, regardless of what market they're in?
Yeah, I mean, I would have two. I know you said one, but I'm going to give you two. One is, and I think Yin mentioned it, you have to have really honest conversations and expectations with your agency. We just onboarded some work where we were under one assumption, and now we're into it and it's different, and that's fine because we love to do it, but it just wasn't. So I think that, and Yin and I have very honest conversations. But I think the other one is really understand what your in quarter pressure is you need to deliver to keep your CFO happy, and divert everything else to shift the calculus of marketing and invest in transformative brand. I think I could be naive and say, move everything north to brand, but frankly, that's an unrealistic piece of advice, because, the majority of brands do have numbers they need to hit. Figure out what is it you need to just make the minimum bar of your obligation as a marketing function every quarter, and take every other penny and figure out how to break the calculus, because you cannot buy growth in the lower funnel. You can just buy the quarter. And so growth only comes from brand. And I think that would be my piece of advice. Nice.
Guys, if our audience would like to learn more, to get a hold of you, to get in touch with you, Yin, what's the best channel for them to do that on your side?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm a pretty active LinkedIn user. And milkpep.org obviously is our corporate website, and we can be reached there as an organization.
And Brad, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also on LinkedIn. You can hit the galepartners.com website and get access to me there. And yeah, absolutely, always available to have intellectual conversations, even if it is about the new Jaguar rebrand.
I think that might be an interesting chat for later on, because there's so much to dig into that one. But yeah, we're in a crazy new world, but the basics are still the basics, I think. And that's what we can learn from that one. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the longer term results, because obviously this is all new, and I'll be watching the trajectory of Milk with greater interest now. And I've no doubt that you guys have a playbook that will probably be able to stand by you for quite a few years to come. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and I hope to chat to you again soon.
you.
Thanks a lot to you.
I want to take a second to show some appreciation. I appreciate every single one of our listeners, but I have a soft spot for listeners who share the love. A shout out to Wade Robinson Design from Canada, my top choice for branding info and education. I research for weeks on who to not only take a brand strategy course from, but to make my go-to source for branding info. Stephen Hurahan is a wealth of knowledge and experience that keeps giving and giving. Stephen, I personally thank you, and my clients should as well, considering I learned the majority of what helps them through you. 100% recommended Stephen's course and listening to everything he's involved in. Wade, I really appreciate your review. Thank you so much, my man. If you want to share the love and possibly get a shout out on the podcast, please take a couple of minutes to leave a review on your favorite platform. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more brand strategy techniques to level up your skills, make sure you check out brandmasteracademy.com. There's plenty of free resources and premium content for you to download and get you going. If you'd like to join our Facebook group full of like-minded brand strategists, all learning from each other, then find us by searching for the Brand Strategy Community, where you can find exclusive content for members as well. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give us an honest review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listened, and make sure you tune in for the next episode of the Brandmaster Podcast.